Today we have a game called Zack. You know, Zack, but not with a Z, with an X. You've got Mega Man X, Castlevania Dracula X, Dix X, Kong's Double Trouble, Equinex, of course, Zardion, X Zone, the legendary X Super Nintendo lineage, you know? Is it Zack? I don't know. I kind of want to say it Ech. That's just kind of fun. You just kind of let it flow out. Every company had an RPG, apparently, and this was Sunsoft's, sort of. They just ported it. The intro cutscene is some of the most generic stuff imaginable. Long ago, there was a huge good versus evil war. The evil was imprisoned, and now, an undefined number of years later, the seal has been broken, and it's your job as the only living descendant of the hero of old to stop it. This is straight out of Dragon Warrior 1. This game wears its inspiration on its sleeve. Look at it. Remind you of anything? It's Ys. Even the strange name with short, uncommon letters that don't normally go together was an obvious inspiration. It's not bump combat, but you gotta get so close it might as well be. It's more like Lagoon with a small sword slash, but nowhere near as ridiculous. We start in a town where everyone says the most uninteresting things imaginable. All the tropes, all the hits, you know. Lately, monsters have been getting real bad. What a nice day really warms my bones. Okay, that's a little strange. Then your first quest is to find the Elder's glasses that he lost. Yeah, we're off to an exhilarating start, huh? After this, a fairy shows up and gives you all of the exposition. The intro should have already told you, but who are we kidding? You already skipped it, cause blah blah blah, seen it all before. I know exactly where this is going, you know exactly where this is going, and if I asked you to predict how this game was going to go, how it was going to end, you would get it exactly correct. It's a game where not much happens, and at the end, you beat the big bad guy, and that's really about all there is for the story. We're just gonna go up to the Dragon Lord and fucking kill him, you know, like in Dragon Warrior 1. Right? Except no, it strangely doesn't even rise to that. Imagine a game where that's the general outline, like that's the plot summary, but then you just don't get to the end. So, the game later sets up another character who isn't like the big bad evil force. He's clearly the anti-hero, the second in command, the badass sidekick. Think Darth Vader to the Emperor, Porky to Gygus. A clear midpoint in the game like Magus and Chrono Trigger. And then the game just kind of ends with a cutscene of the real villain vowing to destroy you, or I guess he just exclaims, "Curse you." It's strange, and this game doesn't end as much as it just decides that it's over at an arbitrary point. I was taken aback and had to find out what happened. So, there actually is a story for this, because Ech was originally for the PC-88, where there were two games, Ech and Ech 2. Just going off footage online, they look like basically the same game. 2 picks up this loose thread 1 leaves us with. Both of these games were then combined into one for the PC Engine release. You know, the Japanese turbo graphic, I shouldn't have to tell you. And the state of your footage, mate, this has to be the worst emulation filter I've ever seen. It's stretched and smoothed over? Disgusting. After the PC Engine Turbo version, the next year, instead of adapting this newer release, which combined both games for some reason, on the Super Nintendo, they only did the original for PC-88. Now, I sort of understand the dual release for that platform, because it's a computer from freaking 1981, using the same processor as old Panasonic washing machines. I get it, the game got a little big for its britches. Shoot, it came on 4 floppies, so instead of ballooning that to a ludicrous amount, they released it in 2 parts. After all, what's more ridiculous, splitting the same game into 2 releases, or releasing it on 8 floppy disks? Well, we get the best of both worlds, and they got close with part 2 because it came on freaking 7. Shout out to Basement Brothers for cataloging all this, by the way. Anyway, this isn't the Turbo, this isn't the PC-88, this is the Super Nintendo, and here, Zack is a microscopic game, and it just kind of stops. This right here is the entire overworld. The rest of the game are just linear paths from this. There are only 3 towns, 3 dungeons, maybe 4 if you want to count these caves. They're sort of dungeon-like, but not nearly as complex. And you bet your ass it's one of those games that compensates by having you grind a shitload. Can't accuse me of saying that this isn't an RPG, because, well, for one, it says right here in the credits, but also because 3/5 of this game is spent grinding. It'll fuck you up right outside the first town. Blam! Dead. It's one of those games with no recovery whatsoever. You can just die if you take the wrong angle on an enemy or time your sword swing wrong. And if you try to sequence break by going to an area with tougher enemies, you can just forget about it. So, what do you do when you're getting your ass kicked in an RPG? Grind! And grind. But first, check the shops to buy better equipment. And it's here we find the real progression gates in this game. He won't sell you the best equipment until you're level 9, even if you have enough money. Why? I mean, I'm trying to save the world over here, man. You can't break your arbitrary level 9 rule just this once, please? Every piece of equipment in the game is level gated, and you will die in one hit to regular enemies if you don't have the armor the game expects you to have for a given area. So that's what turns into, grinding until you can afford whatever equipment the game balanced itself around. You'll always have enough money, every single time it's the level requirement preventing you from buying stuff and progressing. There's no saving up, there's no skipping a piece of armor because you know the next town is a better one that you want to hold out for. Nope, you gotta buy everything or you're fucked. And I haven't even talked about the bosses. You think you're on top of things, like you've ground your ass off, you have all the best equipment available, the dungeon or area you're in is not a threat anymore, and then you walk into the boss room and... yeah, killed in one hit. This happens repeatedly. There's only 5 bosses, and 4 of them killed me in one hit from full health the first time I walked in. So what do you do now? You grind some more, of course, and more, and more, and more, and more, and more, and more. Enemies scale their EXP to your level 2, so it's always diminishing returns. But there is a certain satisfaction in mowing down enemies that bodied you before. Screens which were strictly off limits before now being cut through like butter will never get old. It's a simple trick, but it's core to RPG-dom. Has some personality, and there's a couple trap game overs. In town, there's an NPC that loathes weapons. He's the son of the weapon shop owner, and that's his way of rebelling against the system. Like, fuck you, Dad, I hate swords, I hate them. But then after beating one of the bosses on your way back to town, he's just lying around on the ground. And if you talk to him, he says that he has a weapon for you, which if you're paying attention, you'll know is strange because he hates weapons. So you're given a choice to either accept the weapon or decline. And if you accept it, then you get a legitimate game over. He just stabs you because he was a demon in disguise. I mean, of course it got me, I wasn't paying that close attention, but when I put it together after, it was pretty cute. This is one of those games where you can save anywhere, so that's good. There's another part where when you're going through those caves, there's a guy behind these iron bars that you can let out, but it turns out he was actually there for a good reason. He's a criminal, and then he goes back and he terrorizes the village. You can actually get a game over here because he asks if you want to join him, and you can just say yes and the game ends. That's pretty fun. But otherwise it triggers sort of a boss fight. I say sort of, because look at how easy this was. I like the dungeons overall. They're all pretty intricate, except the caves, because fuck the caves. They're not simple point A to point B things. There's puzzles, objects in the background you have to interact with. A well this game like to keep drawing from is to have you backtrack out of the dungeon in order to talk to an NPC in town. Like, you'll come across an obstacle and our hero will exclaim, "Well, golly willikers, there's iron bars blocking our path. Guess I can't go any further." And then you have to leave to talk to some guy who tells you how to get around them. My favorite one of these moments was when this guy gives us something called Rabby. And he's like this little rabbit in our inventory. I can't use him as an item, so thanks dude, but what am I supposed to do with this rabbit? This is where you have to put your King's Quest thinking cap on and realize that you have to use the rabbit to get an item that's stuck under a bed just out of your reach. Which, okay, that's pretty cute. They do this backtracking thing in all 3 major dungeons, and I believe in this tower, it is required in this area alone at least 3 times? I'm not really sure, I didn't do extensive testing. I sure as heck went in and out more than 3 times, but I think you only need to trigger 3 different NPC conversations. It's kind of nonsense forcing you to backtrack like this. You can't just talk to the NPC ahead of time. You always need to see the obstacle and then go back and then go into the dungeon again to get past it. But the game is so small that you never need to go particularly far. They're minor annoyances if anything. So this is the part of the review where, despite shitting on this game for most of the runtime of the video, I turn around and say that I actually kinda had fun, and if you like ease, this is a solid alternative. You can tell this is from some stanky old Japanese PC because it kind of just ends out of nowhere and is balanced like a drunk ninja walking a tightrope, holding a plate of dishes. Yeah, I'm not really good at these freaking AVGN analogies. If I'm putting on my objective glasses, Zach kinda sucks, but I must be just in a good mood lately because I had an adequate amount of fun. Everything is lighthearted enough. The worst thing that a kind of bad but strangely alluring game can do is overstay its welcome, and Zach didn't. It was short enough, didn't get on my nerves, gets a thumbs up out of 10 from me. Anyway, that's all I got. Shout out to the patrons. Never trust anyone who needs a haircut. See you next time. Goodbye.